Hello, welcome to those of you who are hopping in from the waiting room. Very happy to have you here and would like to thank you all for joining us today. We are about to get started. I'm going to give everyone just another minute or so to trickle in before we begin the webinar. All right, I'm at 101. We're going to get started in the interest of observing everybody's time. So, good afternoon. Really appreciate all of you joining us. My name is Elaine Perlman Mother. I'm the Executive Director of the National Kidney Donation Organization. This is our third Engage session in the 2025-26 series, where we aim to engage, educate, and empower attendees on a broad range of living kidney donation topics. Through this series, we're hoping to raise awareness, build community involvement, and increase the number of living donations to help end the kidney crisis. And we're really thankful for the privilege of hosting these educational sessions, thanks to a renewal for the second year of a generous grant from Sanofi, which is a leader and a global leader in immunology. And today we're focusing on the topic that doesn't get a lot of attention, which is the experience of the family and loved ones of those who choose to become kidney donors. There's understandably a lot of effort put toward educating and supporting those who are choosing to donate a kidney, but the support system of kidney donors are not necessarily always given the same level of education or engagement. And this is a demographic that substantially impacts a person's ability to proceed with donation. So it's typical in the living donor community for those undergoing evaluation to report that their closest loved ones are sometimes experiencing distress or discomfort due to their choice to undergo elective surgery on another person's behalf. So for this reason, we decided to dedicate this webinar in this year's series to this important content. Today, we're going to hear from an industry expert who is employed by the National Alliance for Caregiving. The National Alliance for Caregiving is dedicated to improving quality of life for friend and family caregivers and those in their care. The National Alliance for Caregiving focuses on research, policy analysis, programs, technical assistance, and advocacy for caregiver families. We'll also hear from a panel of three people who have had loved ones who have become living kidney donors. One is the husband of someone who has donated multiple organs. One is the mother of a living donor who then went on to become a living donor herself. And then one is the mother of a kidney recipient and the wife of a living donor. So we'll get more into that panel later. So we hope that you have an opportunity to better understand the unique challenges of people who are in this unique situation and also come away with maybe some tools for how to navigate this experience if you're in it after the session. A couple of housekeeping notes. We're going to keep microphones muted and cameras off for those who are not speaking, but everyone is welcome to use the Zoom Q&A box to ask questions at any time during the presentation, and we will get to those questions after Malina's presentation and after our panel discussion. A little bit more about NKDO before we get started. NKDO was founded in 2016 by non-directed kidney donor Ned Brooks. It is the largest member-based donor advocacy organization in the country, and our mission is to support living kidney donors and those who wish to learn more about the living donation process through mentoring, education, community building, and advocacy initiatives. We're really hopeful that this webinar is going to help educate people considering living donation, those around them, and empower everybody with hope, inspiration, and useful tools. Today, I am joined by Victoria Threadgold. Victoria is going to monitor the chat and pose questions at the end of the webinar for those of you who chime into the chat. But for now, I'd like to get started. Malina Pineyro is the Senior Manager of Health Programs at the National Alliance for Caregiving, where she helps drive systemic change to improve the health and well-being of family caregivers. With expertise in program development, community engagement, and strategic partnerships, Malina has led impactful community initiatives in healthcare, academia, and nonprofits. Her most impactful work includes developing innovative food as medicine programming in Central Florida. She holds an MPH in health promotion, education, and behavior, and is dedicated to addressing social determinants of health to support caregivers and underserved communities. Malina, we're really, really happy you're here with us today. So to start us off, I'd like to give the floor to Malina. She's prepared a presentation to share with us about the experience of the caregiver and about some of the resources provided by the National Alliance for Caregiving. And then we will have a conversation with the panel, who I will introduce after Malina's presentation. If we have time after that, I'll open things up for a bit of a Q&A for anybody on the call. If you're listening in and have questions for Malina or the panelists, please feel free to type them in the Q&A section, and we will take those questions at the end of the call. So love to hand things over to Malina. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much, Emily. I
Yeah.
always want to hear my bio. I'm like, oh, so long. But I am sharing my screen. Does everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I don't know where my screen went. I am so sorry. Give me 1 second. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Okay. Okay. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Malina Pineyro. As mentioned, I am the Senior Manager of Health Programs at the National Alliance for Caregiving. And I just want to be able to, first, I want to say thank you so much for having me. And second, I know that many of you are caregivers, patients, loved ones who are just beginning to learn about what this transplant journey may involve. And I know it can be overwhelming, uncertain, and many times it can be isolating. So my goal is to help provide language, structure, and validation around the experience that can be sometimes unclear. I'll be sharing what national research that we've done tells about the transplant caregiver experience, which there isn't much transplant caregiver experience research, but we've been able to conduct a study where we were able to speak to different people who have experienced the transplant journey. Um, and I'll share a little bit about my own experience as well, since I was also a transplant caregiver. So the National Alliance for Caregiving, just really quickly, is also a membership-based organization. We're a nonprofit that's focused on making family caregiving in the U.S. more sustainable, equitable, and recognized. And everything we do is grounded in one belief: caregivers are essential to care, and systems should be designed with them in mind. So we do this through research, policy, and narrative change, as mentioned. Our research, we're widely known for caregiving in the US, which is a study that we do with AARP. It's released every 5 years and it paints the national landscape of caregiving. Um, and then we do advocacy. So we have like a Caregiver Nation Coalition, which works to advance economic security and healthcare initiatives. And we also do practice change. So that's where our transplant work falls into, where we build cross-sector partnerships to develop solutions that create systems change for families facing complex care. And then, as you can see by all the logos on the screen, we work with so many different companies, organizations. We also work with caregivers to help drive change. And these are our three priorities. So we champion caregiver health and wellness because caregiving is a public health issue and it takes a significant toll. Many caregivers report experiencing burnout, stress, and challenges in managing their own health. We drive economic inclusion, so caregiving doesn't push families into financial hardship. There's so many indirect costs that are associated with caregiving, so we're trying to figure out ways to advance policies to recognize that reality. And we foster caregiver-friendly communities because the system is not working for everyone. So we aim to create systems that doesn't just see the family caregiver as a helper, but as part of the care team. And then this is the reality of caregiving. Over the last decade, it has grown from 43 million to 63 million caregivers in just the last decade. So that means that 1 in 5 adults is a family caregiver. And this came from our report that I mentioned earlier, Caregiving in the US, which was released last year. And then the transplant work we do falls into the health and wellness initiatives. So these initiatives bring together caregivers, clinicians, advocates to accelerate and amplify needed changes in both policy and practice. And we use these two different approaches: complex care initiatives, so cancer and transplant, where we're connecting and providing insights, and then caregiver voices. So we're always incorporating caregiver voices into the work that we do through narrative videos, through screenings and studies and things like that. Oops. So, in 2023, we released a national report that centered on the lived experience of transplant caregivers. This work was informed by caregiver focus groups, one-on-one interviews with transplant caregivers. We had conversations with subject matters who worked with different caregivers, and we did a review of literature change of literature. And we were also able to collect oral stories from kidney transplant caregivers. So I can provide the link after this discussion so you can review it if you're interested. But across all of this, caregivers shared that they were consistently told that it was an intense experience. It was isolating, and they didn't feel prepared for it. They felt like they were kind of thrown into it because you were like, "Oh, okay, you need a caregiver? Sure, I'll be the caregiver." And they didn't know what to expect after that. Many of the caregivers detailed that it was a lot of information for the patients, but there wasn't enough information about what was expected from them in the role. And then a reoccurring theme is that they felt kind of invisible in the system. Caregivers described being asked to manage complex medical tasks such as medications and symptoms with very little structure or training. Sometimes some caregivers said that they would get the training when they were being discharged, which is, a couple of minutes. They also shared that it was hard navigating a fragmented healthcare system wherein there's so many different providers. So, they have conflicting information and there's different types of care plans. And that, as a result, left the caregiver having to connect the dots. And many felt like they were not consistently, they had to consistently be present and advocate in order for everything not to fall apart. And that's something I experienced in my caregiver journey. I felt like I was like the orchestrator of information, making sure that each provider understood what the other provider was saying, knowing all the different appointments, organizing the different procedures and evaluation, especially during the evaluation process, what needed to be done. So I felt like I was like an octopus managing a lot of different things. So, who exactly are the transplant caregivers? A transplant caregiver can be a family member, friend, or neighbor committing to help someone who potentially will receive a transplant. This could be, they could be providing physical, emotional, or logistical support, and it could be throughout any process. So, it could be at diagnosis, during evaluation, during the wait list period, during hospitalization, post-transplant recovery, and then long-term care if there's any type of complication. And many times, a caregiver is required. So some centers require two caregivers. It really depends on the center for the eligibility or waitlist period. And then the role can last months to years. So, what exactly are caregivers doing? Caregivers are managing medications, appointments, transportation. They're doing infection prevention, emotional support, and sometimes medical tasks at home. Most step into these roles without any formal training, as mentioned before, while they're also juggling their own jobs, family, and health. So when I was caring for my mom, I was working full time. I was also going to school full time, getting my master's degree. And I honestly didn't even know I was a caregiver. I was just taking care of my mother. And as I mentioned, I was managing all the different specialists, but I was also managing my mom's medications, like everything on this slide I was doing. I had to apply for my mom's disability, do her financials. There's different medical tasks I'd have to do at home. And then when she was hospitalized, navigating all that as well. So it's a lot, but it's manageable if you have the right information on time. So I'm highlighting this reality to emphasize that everything listed on this slide is normal and widely experienced by transplant caregivers, and it was in our report as well. Um, so emotionally, caregivers reported high levels of stress, anxiety, and fear. And it's because there's a constant worry about outcomes, complications, and whether things are gonna, if you're doing things correctly. Many felt pressure to stay strong even when they're overwhelmed. Physically, caregivers discussed that it really took a physical toll on them because they had sleep disruption, exhaustion, and neglect of their own health. And then financially, caregivers describe having lost income. They had unpaid leave, travel, and lodging if they had to like move away. And having to navigate all the different extra expenses when it came to medication and insurances. And, this is a reflection of a system that relies on caregivers but isn't providing the support that caregivers need. And it's also important to say that caregiving is not all just hardship. Many caregivers shared feeling resilience, pride, deeper relationships, and personal growth over time. And these moments don't erase the challenges, but they do remind us that caregivers are capable, strong, and deeply needed. I am grateful that I was able to navigate my transplant journey with my mom and stand alongside her, advocate for her when she was too tired, provide her the support she needed in order to help try to, get her better. So, what exactly helps transplant caregivers? Caregivers said that they needed early and frequent education and training. So, right when the diagnosis happened, understanding what the process looks like is really important. So, advocate for that. Clear expectations and consistent communication, knowing who to contact when questions arise. Many transplant centers do this. They provide you a list of who the transplant team is and what their roles are. It's important to know who does what so you know who to ask questions to. Peer support from others who understand the experience. Personally, I didn't know that my transplant center had a peer support group, but it would have been really nice to be able to speak to others who have gone through the journey to understand, like, oh, okay, these are things that can happen. This is what I needed to look out for. These are resources that are available, and just to emotionally know that I'm not alone in this process. Um, and then recognizing that caregivers also need emotional and mental health support. And then above all, just know that, you need to be part of the care team and part of that whole process. So these are two resources that I would love to share for transplant caregivers, and I'll share the link in the chat once I finish speaking. But the first one is a toolkit that provides a comprehensive overview of the transplant journey, including like responsibilities, legal and financial considerations, self-care, um, the role reversal in caregiving when, for example, if you're a daughter and mother, that role reversal and the emotional aspects to that. And then the second toolkit provides different resources to peer support groups, financial and education. And I honestly hope this information was helpful. I know I wish I had understood what was expected of me and had my feelings validated earlier. It would have been made things much easier. There are wonderful organizations like NKDO providing meaningful support, and I'm so glad you guys are connected to them. Navigating this journey is not anything at all that I regret, which is why I'm sharing this photo. I am deeply grateful I was able to walk alongside my mother during her transplant process, to care for her, to advocate for her, and to give her a voice when she was too tired to have one. And if you'd like to learn more about this research, share your story, or participate in any future caregiver work, please feel free to reach out to me. And with that, I will give it back to Emily, but I'm excited to hear from the panel.
Thank you so much, Malina. That was a really excellent presentation. With all that information having been shared, I'd like to dive into the lived experiences of some of the people whose loved ones chose to become living kidney donors, and just talk a little bit about what that experience was like for our panelists. So I'd love to introduce them to you now. So we've got three people on the panel today coming from kind of different experiences as loved ones of people who chose to become living donors. So to start off, we've got Kerin Clapp with us. She's the mother of an adult son named Noah, who is in need of a kidney transplant, and her husband, Brian, ended up becoming his donor. She's able to kind of speak from the unique perspective of a person who navigated the emotions of being both caregiver to a recipient and to a donor. So we are very excited to have Kerin on the call. Next, we have Elaine Perlman, who joins us today. She represents a unique subset of the caregiver population. After her young adult son, Abie, chose to become a living kidney donor, she observed his donation and recovery process, learned more about the need for donors, and decided to proceed with becoming a donor and later an advocate herself. So, Elaine, we're really happy to have you with us today. And then we also have David Austin with us. He is the husband of Christina Austin, who is a kidney, liver, and egg donor. Christina and David are very active, participating in long distance races together. And Christina's donation and advocacy are a huge part of her life. So David has been Christina's caretaker during the recovery from her donations. And we're really excited to have David here to represent people who are in, a similar situation to you today. So really happy to have you all here. I do have some prepared questions for the panel, and then we will take questions from the Q&A from anyone who has any to chime in with. So just to start off, I'd love to hear from each of you on the panel, just to share what it was like the first time your loved one shared with you that they wanted to donate a kidney. What was your just kind of gut reaction, and what did that look like?
I'll go first. My son, when he was 17-year-old, told me he was going to donate his kidney to a stranger. He didn't ask me, he told me. And my reaction was, what, do you want to die? Like, it just sounded like such a serious and dangerous thing to do. And he was on the debate team, so he was all ready with his evidence. And he said it's way safer than having a baby or an appendectomy. You've done both of those things. And he explained to me and showed me some videos about how life-giving it is to become a kidney donor. And pretty quickly I said to him, well, if all goes well, I'll do it also. But yeah, my first reaction was that it was very dangerous because, it's a common thing in media and in movies that giving a kidney sounds like something very serious and dangerous. They mischaracterize the reality that kidney donation is, in reality, very safe.
I appreciate that. Let's see. Um,
I can
Kerin,
chime
please
in.
go ahead.
Yeah, so my experience was obviously different because it was my son, my young adult son, who was sick and needed a kidney. So I was all for my husband being the donor. And this is something that we had known was sort of coming. So different emotional mindset. With that, I think given that he was hoping to give the kidney to our son, it was very important to my husband that he be the donor, that we not have to go to our other son yet, because who knows if my other son is a match, then he could be down the road. But so it was very important. We had a couple people agree to do pre-testing, but it was interesting watching how important it was to my husband that he be the donor. And I think the thing that surprised me the most about the early stages of the process was how rigorous the testing was. And, he joked that he had a better idea of his health than, most people walking around. And so that's something that I bring up when I talk to people about living donation. I can't say it was no big deal for him, but it certainly wasn't what I think people think it is as a donor.
Thanks, Kerin. David, we'd love to hear from you just kind of what your gut reaction was when you first heard about Christina's decision to become a donor.
So my initial gut reaction was that I wanted to support her in whatever it is that she wanted to do, right? So it was, question about her safety, how safe is it? And in her mind, she didn't really care how safe it was. She wanted to do it. So there was no changing that decision. So then it was, what can I do to support her?
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Um, the next question I have is also for the whole panel. So after you were kind of navigating your initial feelings when learning about your loved one's decision, what was the process that you undertook to get kind of more well educated about the idea, more comfortable with the idea? Like, what did that look like for you practically?
For me, it was just doing a lot of reading and watching of videos and honestly being comforted. That was the result of all of my research. I was surprised at how easy and safe, easy in the sense of a short hospital stay, and how safe it was to donate. But Abie, my son, just gave me a whole bunch of stuff to review, and yeah, all of it just looked so amazing. I just couldn't understand why kidney donation is portrayed in such a wrong way in our culture, that it is something that more people should do. And I feel like that education gap needs to be over really needs to be somehow eliminated, so that people understand how safe and life-giving it is to donate a kidney.
Thank you for Karen.
I'll
Go ahead.
chime in. So again, because my son had a kidney condition, we sort of figured he would need a transplant at some point. I think people's stories really helped me. I was on a Facebook group with other parents of and people that have the condition that my son has, and through that, got to follow and pay attention to stories of donors and living, just, went and, they did this incredible thing, and many of them altruistically, like your son, Elaine, and then, just went on to live, completely normal, active lives. So, I was very grateful to have that perspective, but I don't think a lot of people, I agree with you. I think we need to change the the narrative about what it means to donate a kidney, and how safe it really is, and how life-giving and how important.
Thanks, Karen. David, was there anything that you did to kind of, navigate the education process for yourself to kind of come to, a better understanding of what the next steps were going to look like for you?
Well, whenever, in today's world, education's pretty easy, right? You can go online and really do your own research. So that's what I did. I went online and just kind of did my own research, wanted to know what the facts were, what are the risks, what are the benefits, and that's how I became educated. Just go online. Of course, you talk to Christina, and see what her feelings were about it. But really, did my own research so that I would know what the risks were, which is always the concern, right? What's the risk?
Right. Awesome. The next question I have is specifically for David. So Christina has donated multiple times. So I'm curious about what your response was to her subsequent donations after her first one. You had the experience of being there as a loved one and a caretaker after the first time that she chose to donate. And what was that like for you when she made those subsequent decisions?
Well, again, so there's no change in her mind. So it was, all right, what do I need to do to support her? What's that going to look like? What are her needs going to be? And how can I make sure that we have everything in place to support her? It's really not an easy thing to care for someone who is, had a major surgery, right? And it doesn't matter whether this is an elective surgery or something that, you didn't choose to do, right? So there's always going to be a lot of things to do, and it's a big lift, right? But if you care about other people and you care about your loved one, you find a way to make it work. And that's what I did, right? And I would honestly, if she wanted to donate something else, there's nothing left to give. But if she did, I'd find a way to make that work too.
That's awesome. Thanks, David.
You're welcome.
Next question I have is for Karen. I would love for you just to reflect a little bit on what it was like to navigate whatever feelings that came along with two of your loved ones undergoing a transplant procedure. Obviously, you care about your son and you want him to become healthy. You care about your husband and you don't want him to undertake unnecessary risk. What was that balance like? And just I'd love to hear you reflect on that a little bit.
Um, I think because of the dire need of my son, some of the emotional hand-wringing maybe just didn't happen. We were grateful that my husband is, strong and healthy, and, went through all the tests, and that he was able to do it. His kidney anatomy was a little complicated, so we loved our transplant center. They were great at keeping us informed. And, you know, they said that his kidney anatomy was a little complicated, so it would take a little bit longer to get the kidney out. So, you know, there was certainly that moment when, you know, you're in the waiting room and you get an email that the patient is on the operating table, and then you get another email shortly after that the other patient is under the operating table. Um, but I think my perspective, because I had both donor and recipient, was, you know, this is what we have to do. I very much trusted our team. And, you know, I will say they guided us really completely. In terms of caregiving after the fact, so, you know, before the fact, my husband navigated the process of all the medical checks and all that on his own independently. After the fact, um, it really was seamless. I did have my other son drive my husband home from the hospital because he was released a day early. We laughed at, you know, in day two days, a day or after being home or 2 days after being home, my husband was not even taking Tylenol. And he was walking 4 miles in the neighborhood and he was fine. We joke that the only hiccup in the whole process was when he got home from the hospital, he laid down upstairs under a weighted blanket and took a nap. And when he woke up, he couldn't get the weighted blanket off of him so he had to call the son who was home and say, "Can you come up and take the weighted blanket off me?" But I had been a caregiver for my mother who had some serious health conditions, and I'd taken care of people after surgery. And this was very much not like that. I mean, he was walking up and down the stairs fine. He was moving around fine. You know, he couldn't lift weights or go run, but he was able to shower and bathe, you know, take care of himself. So for me, having taken care of people post-surgery in other contexts, this was very simple with the exception of the weighted blanket.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The next question I have is for Elaine. You alluded to this earlier, and I was interested to hear kind of what you indicated, but I'd love for you to just kind of go a little bit more granularly into your response. Can you share with us at what point in the process of Abie's donation did you realize that donation wasn't just something you were going to support him through, but that you thought it was also something that was right for you? Can you kind of go into that a little bit more?
Absolutely, yeah. So it was about a week after he told me that he wanted to donate his kidney after I'd done my research that was super safe and really life-giving. So as I said, he was 17 at the time. He had already phoned around to all the transplant centers in the New York City area, and there are a bunch of them. And at that time, none of them would look at him except for NYU, who said at 18, you can donate a kidney to a stranger. But the funny thing is, at all those other hospitals, you could donate to a loved one at age 18. But only NYU would let you do the non-directed donation. Since then, they've all changed to 18 for non-directed donors. This was back in 2017. And so, yeah, about a week in, I said, you know, I'll do it. If all goes well, I'll let you go first. And then I was with Abie while he got tested. So at NYU, they did almost everything in a single day. And that's where I met Steve Wilson in the waiting room, by the way, very cute. And then Steve Wilson is a mutual friend of ours. He's also a donor.
I had no idea you guys met in that way. That's
yeah. It's
great.
really cute. And so I was with Abie every step of the evaluation process. Then when he turned 18, the transplant center said to him, you know what, there's no rush for this. Let's wait a year, go to college, and the summer between freshman and sophomore year, if you still want to do this thing, I will definitely let you donate your kidney. So they did delay it. That's a long cooling off period, but you know, he was just so excited when it finally happened.
That's so great. And how long after that was your donation?
6 months. So we joked around that I babysat Abie during his testing. He babysat me during his testing. My surgery was in January. Actually, my kidney anniversary is tomorrow. So my surgery was my surgery was in 2020 in January. Abie was in college, so he couldn't be there during the surgery, but. It was definitely, he had wanted to launch a kidney chain, and I said, I'll be your chain. So he donated to a single individual who was at the hospital, a 21-year-old who at the time was had to drop out of high school due to a genetic disease. His name is Chris. The two met on the set of Good Morning America on live television. Since that time, Chris has finished high school, finished college, wants to be a doctor, and he's a new father. So, it's just such a beautiful thing to be able to give life like that.
Amazing. The next question I have is for all of you. You guys have all, I mean, you're all obviously advocates of living donation. Have it has positively impacted your lives, and you're on the other side of it. You see how valuable and beneficial it is. But I am wondering, for people who may be on the call or listening to the recording who, have concerns or who, but are looking at this from like a more tense or challenging emotional standpoint. Can you share just kind of candidly what the hardest part of being a caretaker for your loved one was, or like what the most challenging element of that looked like, and then maybe also how you overcame that?
Well, so I've so far as with Christina, the the kidney donation was really easy, right? There's not a whole lot of recovery for kidney donation. Other organs maybe are a little more difficult, right? And they require more attention. And, she's more limited if you do something that's a more major surgery. But I think all in all, for kidney donation, that's probably the easiest one, right? The recovery is very quick. The after effects are minimal, right? There's minimal pain. And she's, other than having to watch some of her diet, right? There's really no change in lifestyle post kidney donation, right? So you can be the exact same person that you were before, maybe a little better, right? Because you're going to take better care of your body. You'll be more attentive to those things because now you have to pay attention, but you won't have the long recovery. So it's not as hard for a kidney as maybe some other organs would be.
Thank you for that. Elaine or Kerin, anything to add there?
The hardest part was waiting while Abie was in surgery. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. I knew everything was going to go well. I had a very good feeling about it. But, it's tense. And once I saw him in the recovery room, all of my, concerns dissolved. But, yeah, you can't not be nervous when someone is in surgery.
Awesome. Thank you for that feedback. Would love to hear from anyone who wants to chime in. Was there anything about caregiving during the acute physical recovery period for your loved one that came as a surprise to you? And if so, what was that?
No surprises.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would say the only surprise that I had was how I didn't really know what to expect. Like I said, I had been a caregiver for people post-surgery before and, really expected sort of to have to do some level of that, physical help and, balance up the stairs and things like that. And we really just didn't, there was, once he was discharged, it really was, I mean, obviously he wasn't going out and running errands and lifting weights or anything like that, but there really wasn't, as David said, there wasn't pain, there wasn't disability. It was pretty seamless, and I think I found that surprising.
So after, right before my surgery, my surgeon gave me really good advice, which was take your pain tablet 5 or 10 minutes before the current one wears off, because if you get into a pain state, you're going to need more painkillers for longer. Great advice. Please spread the word on that one. Abie didn't get that advice, and we're all afraid of becoming addicted to pain pills. That's sort of all over the news about the horrible consequences of that. So unbeknownst to me, he was stretching things out so that he was trying to go without pain meds. And so his recovery was actually much harder than mine. We live in an apartment where you have to walk up 6 flights of stairs to get to the apartment. And after I returned from the hospital, it was no problem for me to get up those stairs. Abie, on the other hand, was having a lot more pain, and so than I had. And he spent a couple nights at a friend's house who didn't have to walk up to get to his apartment. So that's just a cautionary tale. Also, a 19-year-old boy or young man. He had tons of friends visit. They brought over video games. They were a bit on the wild side in the hospital room, and so he overdid it. And he's the first one to tell you that he regretted it. But you know, it's just sort of one of those live and learn kind of experiences. So it surprised me that he was, you know, secretly just trying to not do, you know, not take the painkillers, which are so important at the very beginning.
That's super valuable insight. Thanks, Elaine. A couple more questions for the group. One is I'd love for each of you guys to reflect, if you can, on how you feel about living kidney donation now, versus if you can just like, you know, revert back to how you maybe felt about it at the very beginning, before your loved one actually had the procedure, when you were just learning about donation, when you were just learning about the either the need or the decision to do it, kind of what the difference was between where you started and kind of where you have landed now.
I'll go. I mean, I was scared before. I actually have the same condition that my son has. So they would not, even though I have pretty normal kidney function, they would not take my kidney. So I cannot personally be a donor. But I think before this process, I was also hopeful that my husband would be the donor, because if he wasn't, we would then be turning to one of my other kids, one of whom is a blood type match. So we thought that could be direct. The other would have been an exchange. And that would have, you know, at the time that made me really nervous. I don't think it would make me nervous now, you know, any more nervous than, you know, if they, you know, had to have a root canal or something. I mean, if it was their decision, and if, or, you know, if either one of them said that they wanted to donate altruistically or to put a credit in, you know, I would be all in favor of that. I've really seen how it's actually really enriched my husband's life.
I appreciate that feedback, Karen. Anyone else want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I would say before donation, I was unaware and uneducated, right? So I wasn't aware really of the need, the scale of the need for kidneys. I wasn't aware of the surgery. I wasn't aware of what recovery looked like. I just wasn't aware, right? So during donation and post donation really has educated me to the need and how easy it is and how it could easily, you know, take care of some of the issues for supply, right? If people would do living donation instead of waiting for, you know, another person to die, unfortunately, right? So education and awareness is kind of where I started, was a lack of, and then, you know, ended up here where I still really don't know anything, but I know a lot more than I did.
Sounds like you know a lot to me.
I mean, 3 donations there, David. You've been through it all. Yeah. And so, yeah, I guess I went from fear to encouraging anyone who's eligible to consider donation. I think it's, I wish people knew how good it feels to give. I think people know just from their own life experiences what it's like to, you know, give rather than receive. There's, you know, much more of a dopamine hit when you give, but to give and save another person's life, I mean, what an opportunity. We only, as far as I know, live once on this earth, and it is just such a beautiful feeling within me that just doesn't go away. That knowing that I saved someone's life. In the case of my son, he often forgets that he's donated a kidney. So it's much less on his mind. Once in a while, he'll see the tiny scar on his abdomen and remember. But for him, he's delighted that he did it, but he doesn't think about it nearly as much as I do. And by the
Awesome.
way, over 2 million people have seen that Good Morning America video. The one person who hasn't is my son. So
He's never watched it.
he's not seen
That's
it.
hysterical. Awesome. Guys, we have reached the last of my prepared questions, just so that everyone in the, on the call is prepared. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask any of the panelists, please feel free to put them in the chat now. We'll open it up and ask those questions so that these guys can respond to any questions that you guys may have. But my final question for the group is, if you had one piece of advice that you needed to give to someone whose loved one was considering or, being evaluated for donation, what would that piece of advice be?
After we donate, we're not supposed to take ibuprofen or Advil because it's not so good for kidneys. It turns out 17,000 people die from ibuprofen usage annually. And we're supposed to use Tylenol, which doesn't kill nearly as many people, but is lousy for our livers. And so I've learned that tart cherry juice, I buy the concentrated form. I keep it in my fridge. They also have it in tablet form. Does the exact same thing as Advil. 1 tablespoon of the concentrate equals 1 Advil. So I'll take 2 tablespoons in a glass of water. It's delicious. I'll wait 10 minutes. If I still have pain or inflammation, I'll take another 2 tablespoons. That's the most I've ever needed since I donated back in 2020.
I guess my only add would be looking back, I'm not only incredibly grateful to our transplant center, but I trusted them completely. And I think going through this process, particularly if you're an altruistic donor, and making sure that you are comfortable with the provider and the support, that really helped make things seamless for us. There was always a person that I, as a caregiver, could call with questions. I never felt like I was bothering her. And that was huge for my husband, who was the donor, as well as for me, who was the caregiver.
No, I don't think so. I don't have anything to add to it. Christina just asked me. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think so.
Okay. Awesome. I'll chime in as a person who also is a living donor. Not a caregiver myself, but my husband and my mother were both pretty resistant to the idea of me becoming an altruistic living donor at the time. They ultimately came around and became kind of my biggest supporters and were very happy on the other side when they found out that I was okay. Their concern all came from, love and just fear of what potentially could go wrong, and when it didn't go wrong, they were very happy about what I had done. But I would say the biggest piece of advice that I would give on their behalf is just to attend appointments with your loved one. Go with them to their doctor's appointments. Take that opportunity to ask questions of their transplant team, their medical professionals. Questions that they may not be thinking about are things that you might be thinking about as you consider, the process of caretaking and what that will look like for you. And the transplant professional should have insight into supporting you in that way. So attending those appointments, I think, is really important and was helpful for my loved ones. So that's the piece of advice that I would give. Looking at the chat and the Q&A, I do not actually see that there are any questions. I'm happy to give people a couple of more minutes to chime in. But while we are giving them that opportunity, panelists, are there any other final thoughts that you'd like to share with the people who are on the call or who might be watching the recording, who, maybe have someone who is going to be donating and, may have thoughts or concerns or just final things to say?
As I think the only family member here of a recipient, I will say, a heartfelt thank you for considering, for being willing to support someone who is doing this. It's an incredible thing. My son received his transplant 4 years ago, and he is running marathons and skiing and working and attending festivals and just living his best life. He has become an advocate for this as well. But it's seeing that what it does to someone's life. I just, on behalf of both, to both donors and caregivers, just a heartfelt thank you for being willing to walk with your donor through this journey.
Thank you for saying that, Kerin. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. I would say the one thing I could add would be it's it's a gift, to be able to donate altruistically or, to somebody right? Like that's a gift and it's something that anybody can do. It's not as difficult or scary after you get to the other side as before you start, right? That's what I would say.
Appreciate that, David.
And just that donation is just an expression and an act of love. And so just sending all the love out there to the caregivers and the donors, and of course, those who are healed, like Kerin's son. It's nothing more beautiful than giving the gift of life.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate your participation and very hopeful that this is helpful to those who are on the call and those who are listening to the recording. We'd like to once again thank Sanofi for their generous support of this webinar series. We'd love to ask those of you who are in attendance to take a quick moment to complete a brief survey. It'll help us as we seek to continue to provide high quality educational opportunities for our members and the wider kidney transplant community. The link for that survey is going to be visible at the end of this meeting and in the follow-up email, but I'm also going to add it to the webinar chat here. So please feel free to pop over and fill out that form. There is a $30 gift card to Amazon that we'll be sending out to one random person who has filled out that form. So please feel free to do that. Additionally, don't forget to register for the next Engage Ask Me Anything session, which will take place on March 12th, 2026 at 3 p.m. here on the Zoom. The RSVP link has been pasted in the chat and can also be found by going to this link right here, nkdo.org/NKDO-engage. The topic on that is going to be achievements post-donation. So we're going to be having breakout sessions to talk about the different ways that people on the other side of donation are living their best lives. And I'm looking forward to that conversation and welcoming people to participate in that as well. Again, thank you so much to Malina and to our panelists. We're going to end the webinar here and just hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Emily. It was great.
Thank you for having us.
Bye, guys.
Bye.